Good morning, my beautiful kings and queens. It is Friday, April 10th, 2015. It's kind of chilly out here this morning, so hopefully you bundled up. Kings and queens, someone proposed me with the question the other day, and I'm a little stuck on it. I was asked, was I trying to racially unite or racially incite? Well, honestly, I feel that my goal is to racially unite. Now, in the process of doing that, some people will be incited, i.e. upset, because based on the history of America, it is not good when it comes to black and white people.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Don't mind the bandana, I just left the gym, but I'm doing a car video, but just not any car video. As you can see, I am currently doing a review as I drive of the documentary that came on last night about Sandra Bland. I believe it was called Say Her Name, The Life and Death of Sandra Bland. It should be called The Life and Murder of Sandra Bland, because I truly believe that this woman was murdered. I actually put it out there on my community tab asking people where they're going to watch it. Some people said they were going to watch it. Some people said they weren't going to watch it because it would have been too much. Or some people said that they just don't watch TV, and that's fine. And I also said that I was going to do a review about it as well. And let me tell you, that particular documentary, while it was really good, it opened up some old wounds. Don't mind if I'm not looking at the camera. I have to pay attention to the road, so y'all just gonna have to hear me. Don't make it seem like I'm not giving y'all any contact, but I'm trying to be safe about this as well. But yeah, it was a very good documentary. It was almost 2 hours long. It was about an hour and 45 minutes long. It came on at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on HBO last night. Very well done documentary. I remember some old things that came about the case, the incident, and some new things I learned as well, which I'm gonna talk about in here. I actually had to take some notes down. I put them in my phone, but clearly I couldn't look at my phone and record at the same time, especially with me driving. So I had to rewrite everything, and I kind of have to somehow go off of my memory and refer to my notes at the same time. But I'm gonna do my best. One of the first things that they showed was the last video that she recorded. You know, the one where, I think it was the one where people really became familiar with who she was. She had this, I guess you could say like a little vlog type of thing that she had on her Facebook page called Sandy Speaks. And she was basically speaking her mind and, talking about, real shit. Like, this woman was very deep. She was very knowledgeable. She was very intelligent, very articulate, and everything like that. And I think that was one of the major reasons why I feel that she was targeted and why she was killed. I do not believe that this woman committed suicide. I really don't. I really, truly don't. But that's pretty much how it all started off, and then it segued into showing her mother and her sister going to her grave. It was, I can tell it was winter because there was a lot of snow on the ground, so her mother had like a windshield cleaner, when it snows, for those of you who experience the snow, and you have to wipe the snow off your windshield so you can see. And she did that, and she uncovered her grave. And that was my first time actually seeing Sandra Bland's grave, like ever since she was buried. And it's a very nice grave. It had a picture of her, like, 3 pictures of her. I think it was like 3 most common pictures that we've seen of her. And the grave was so well kept up, even underneath the snow. You would think that the woman was probably just buried the week before. Like, it's been real kept up. No one's messed with it. No one's vandalized it, because when it comes to things like this, a lot of people like to mess and tamper with other people's grave sites. And I mean, Emmett Till is a perfect example of that. But it was well kept together, and her and her mother was basically saying they're still fighting for her, still fighting for justice for their loved one, their daughter, and their sister. The next part that it showed was a bystander footage, and I never saw that footage. I may have, but I can't remember. So much stuff is happening. You gotta think, this was back in 2015. It was 3 years ago, and it was some bystander footage that showed when she was being manhandled by that cop. And we're gonna really get into his ass, because just seeing his face and hearing his name and the stuff that came out about him made me even more pissed. But it was some bystander footage that someone recorded, and you can hear Sandra Bland saying, thank you for recording this and everything, of you know, like that, because who knows what they could have done with that footage. And I believe in the documentary it said that that footage didn't get released until maybe a week later, after a lot of the people in the public had already formulated their own opinion about this case, even after they had a hold of that footage. And that was all done by design, because they didn't want people to be against Brian and Cynthia, who was the cop that ultimately was the one that arrested her and did a whole bunch of other stuff, but we won't get into that. The next part I wanted to talk about was they interviewed the attorney. I forget his name. He was the attorney for the family, and he mentioned something I never heard before. He said a few months prior to Sandra Bland's death, she was rear-ended by a motorcycle, and they showed a picture of it. Like, the motorcycle was literally gauged into the back of her car. Like, this person must have been driving pretty fast on their motorcycle. So I thought that was very interesting. And it's crazy how it seems like ever since she really started putting herself out there and people started becoming familiar with who she was, she became a target. And that's why I understand why a lot of people who leave comments on my channel or in my comment section and saying, Tarian, please be careful and please be safe when I'm doing stuff like this. I understand why, and I definitely appreciate the concern, because you never know who could be watching my content, who may feel some type of way. I mean, it's one thing when you get trolls online, as you already know, I get trolled a lot and called out quite a few of them as well. But it's another thing when you have to have a run-in with them in person. And this woman seemed like she probably got trolled online, and she got trolled in real life by these pigs. The next part, and I'm looking down at my sheet, so if I keep looking down, that's what I'm looking at. Oh, this part right here really messed with me. So they mentioned something about the Texas Rangers, and when they said Texas Rangers, now this is after she gets arrested and she got thrown into that jail. They mentioned something about the Texas Rangers, and when they said Texas Rangers, I immediately thought of Amber Geiger and Botham Jean. And you know, they basically gave the information to them, and they pretty much handled it with kid gloves. And that's basically what happened in this particular case as well. Now, it says that, according to them, that Sandra Bland had made 21 alleged calls, and I say alleged, from the prison. Now, she spoke with her family, and, you know, just to see how she was. You know, her sister, of course, and her other loved ones was wondering, like, why in the world is she in jail? Like, what's going on? Because I think she was going to the store, like to the grocery store. And mind you, this woman was getting ready to start a new job. She was getting ready to start a new job at her alma mater, and, you know, she was getting ready to start a whole new life. So they said that she made 21 alleged phone calls. I'm trying to figure out how in the hell can you make 21 phone calls from jail? I don't know how they can allow you to make that many. So when they said 21 calls, the first thing I would have asked for was a call log. That would have been the first thing I would have asked for. And I think they did retrieve it, and it didn't add up. But, you know, it's a bunch of corruption. We're talking about Texas here. So it doesn't surprise me in the least bit that they would make up something like this. The next part was the noose. Now, we all know that they say that she hung herself with a trash bag from a trash can that was inside of her cell. I'm trying to figure out why in the hell would they have a trash can with a trash bag in a cell. Like her sister has said, she said usually when you're in jail, they'll take away something or some things away from you so you won't harm yourself, such as a belt, any type of jewelry, some shoestrings, nothing to hang yourself or maybe cut yourself with, but you would leave a trash bag and a trash can in there. Let me move over right quick. So I thought that was kind of weird too, just like her sister had stated. And also the noose was tied so perfectly, like very, very perfectly. And mind you, Sandra Bland was slammed on the ground by Brian and Cynthia, and she said that my head hurts, I can't hear. Because, you know, if you slam someone hard on the side where their ears are, their ears will start ringing and it'll feel like they're clogging and closing up on you. So if she, you know, got slammed on the ground and her head was hurting, she probably had a slight concussion. which I'm sure they didn't check for. And how would she be able to make this perfect noose? And they showed what the noose looked like, and it was perfectly tied. It wasn't like anything out of place. It looked like it was tied by somebody who has done this before. And what they tried to do was, when they asked her questions, they said, have you ever thought about committing suicide? Next to it, apparently she said yes. And then the next question he said, or asked in the statement in the papers that she had to sign off on, they said, have you thought about committing suicide today? She said no. So that's probably why they took that right there and ran with the whole she committed suicide thing, even though I think that's some bullshit. I don't think that woman committed suicide, and many other people out there don't believe the same thing either. It just it's a ball of confusion. It really is. But I don't believe that woman committed suicide. I truly don't. I think she had a boost. If they say she had committed suicide, I think she had a boost. Now, they're supposed to check on the inmates that's in there on a regular, repeated basis. They said there was no one that went in or out of her cell during a certain time period. That also leaves some suspicion to me, because it's like, what so you never checked up on this woman who said her head hurts? You don't know what's going on with her and everything of that nature. It's just really messed up. Let me see what the next part is. Oh, the next part. Speaking of the pig, and I mentioned his name already, Brian Encinia, that son of a bitch. So his issue is when, okay, this is the part where they're showing the clip of when he pulled her over, and the whole traffic infraction ensued, and he got mad and everything like that, and he was telling her to get out the car, all over a turn signal, a signal lane change, over something that was so small. Oh, this is something they should, if it was such a big deal, all he had to do was give her a ticket and keep it moving. But when they showed the dash cam footage of it, the lawyer had pointed something out to me that I didn't catch, or probably a lot of people didn't catch before. Brian Encinia smacked Sandra Bland. They even played the clip slowly so you can hear the smack. He smacked her. He assaulted this woman. He did. And then he did the usual, oh, I fear for my life shtick bullshit that they love to always do. And he pulled her out of the car. He, with the whole thing with the cigarette and all things of that nature. And that's when he, remember when he said, I'm going to light you up and all of that, had his gun pointed at her. And then he purposely and intentionally manhandled her, but he did it off the dash cam. If y'all remember that, he pulled her away from the view of the dash cam so you couldn't see what he was doing to her, and which he had her face down on the ground. That's when she hit her head, and he had his knee in her back, and had her arm aggressively behind her back, to the point where she said, I feel like you're about to break my arm, my wrist hurts, and all types of stuff. And he's still yelling at her, saying all kinds of I don't cares, and cursing at her and all kinds of shit. So to be quite honest, Brian Encinia is the main reason as to why Sandra Bland is not here today. He is definitely indirectly involved with her murder. I say indirectly because he didn't actually kill her, but he definitely had some involvement with her murder, because if he didn't mess with her that day, or if he just did his job the correct way, then she would still be alive with us today, and we would have probably heard about her story, but she would still be here to be able to tell it. But yeah, he definitely did all of that and a whole lot more. So, there's that. Let's see. Then after that part, they go back in a little bit and they discuss her family life. Basically, her early life, her growing up with her mother, her siblings. And they said that she was a part of a cheerleading squad. She was the only black girl on the squad. All the other girls was white. I believe they said she was in the band. She was very involved. She was a very involved person. She was not an introvert in any sense of the word. She definitely had a lot of friends. She was very outgoing, like a very well-rounded individual. Someone that I wish I could have met, because we probably would have been cool and tight and everything like that. She talked about the things I like to talk about. So, she was a very, interesting human being that unfortunately got taken from us too soon. the next part, they talk about the sheriff. Now, this is the sheriff of the county who also is familiar with the jail in which he was residing in. They said that he had multiple racial discrimination cases against him, yet he still got voted in as the sheriff. But again, this is Texas, and it looks like a small town. I think it was called the Waller County. It's called Waller County. So it sounds like a very small place, you know, where everybody knows everybody and people are all on code down there. She probably didn't know anybody down there. She may have, I don't know. And you know, but then again, you know, David Clark himself, the Oreo, was also voted in as sheriff, and we already know how he got down. He might as well have been a white man in blackface. Basically, that's what he is. Yeah, that's not so surprising about this sheriff being voted in, and he happened to be a racist bastard, especially down in the state of Texas. Let's see here. Oh, this is the part right here that let me know that, or the reason why people really had an outpouring support for Sandra Bland after she was killed. She was about her people. This woman was definitely on code more so than most. One thing that I learned about this documentary is that she had a job. It was a very well-paying job. I think it was in advertising, because when they showed the clip, she was promoting some kind of a product. And one of the people that they interviewed had said that she ended up quitting that job because eventually it started to go against her morals. Now, anybody who can quit a job that pays well because it messes with your morals like that is definitely a person who's on code. Do you know how hard that must be, or must have been, for her to do? But she said, like, you know, they're not lining up with my morals. We're not seeing eye to eye. Maybe we're constantly getting in conflicts. I need to go my own separate way. And then that's what led us into learning about her with the whole Sandy Speaks things and that. And she was pretty much a pro-black woman through and through. She was about her people. And I think that's why a lot of people like myself and others gravitated towards her so much, and still do to this day. Like, when you hear her name, it's like hearing the name of a family member that you may not have seen in a long time, or hearing the name of a friend you haven't seen in a long time, or someone that you just could have a casual conversation with, that, you know, someone that you just loved and appreciated because they spoke truth to power. And she was definitely one of those people. So I definitely applaud and salute her for that, because she definitely was going places. Who knows what she could have did with the knowledge that she obtained. She could have been, hell, she could have been the next Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, which I'm sure was probably one of her influences, which is not a bad person to emulate. A very excellent person, by the way. But she definitely was about her people. She kept it real. She told it like it was. If you watch some of her old clips, you'll see, like, this woman was fearless. Like, whatever she said and whatever she spoke to her mind, she meant it. You can look at her eyes and tell all of that. Let's see, the next part is, so this is the part that got me, and I'm going to bring it back when I mention something else towards the end of this review. So when Sandra Bland got sent to the jail, they ended up charging her with a felony. They said that she assaulted the cop, and the minute Brian Encinius said, "I fear for my life," that was it. That's all he needed to say, and that's all that needed to happen. And she got charged with a felony. What happened with her should have at least been a misdemeanor, but they overcharged her. And they did that for a reason, because they were trying to probably build a case up against her to, if she didn't die, to send her to jail for a couple of years, or at least put her on probation. But they tried to charge her charged her with a felony, when, you know, he was the one that instigated the entire thing. But it's all going to come full circle when I get back, when I get towards the end of the video. But charging her with a felony for that shit, that was, you know, absolutely ridiculous. Okay, let me see something. I'm trying to pay attention to this road right quick while I'm doing this review. One thing that I did like seeing, though, is the new Black Panther Party. They actually lined up and organized outside of the jail where she was at. Of course, they had their pigs out there, pigs in blue, lined up to make sure no shit popped off. But they were out there armed with their guns and everything like that, you know, just showing solidarity, you know, with each other in support of this woman. Like I'm telling you, her death spoke a lot of volumes. Like it reached the masses. It became a worldwide phenomenon where people across the pond were saying hashtag say her name, which is basically the hashtag that became synonymous with her memory. Like that's her legacy right there, is that say her name thing. But they were lined up, armed to the teeth, and you know, if anything popped off, they was ready to pop off too. And that's pretty much all they showed right there. The next part was her funeral, which she had a nice homegoing service. She had a nice funeral. She had a huge turnout for her funeral. You would have thought that a dignitary or a celebrity had passed away with the amount of people that showed up, because it wasn't just family and friends and people who knew her. It was other people, maybe from the media or people out, you know, who heard about her story, who came down. Like a lot of people showed up for her service, and she had a nice beautiful service. I think her family, they pretty much wore white. I don't think they did the whole wear black thing, which is, you know, very different. I actually like that they did that instead of the whole wear black thing. You know, switch it up a little bit. You know, it's supposed to be, I know, like in occasions like this is a very sad occasion, especially with the way that she left. It's not like she died of natural causes or she died of an illness. She was killed, so her life was cut short. But you know, it was a really nice service. All in all, it was really nice. The next part they brought up was about the bond. Now, her family, I think her sister, had spoke to her on, like, you know, on the phone while she was in the jail. You know, and they were talking about the bond, and I think this was in the news. They said that they found out what her bond was. Her family, her mother and her sisters, had gathered up some money to pay off the bond, because I don't think it was a very high bond. I'm not sure. I can't remember what the amount was. And they were prepared to bond her out, and they called the jail and said that we have the money to bond our sister out. And they basically came back and said, oh, she can't bond out today. So right there raised a lot of red flags. Like, you mean to tell me that we raised all this money to bond out our loved one, to only sit here and tell us that we can't bond her out because she can't bond out today? And I think that was at the time when she probably was dead, and they probably didn't tell her. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. That's probably what it was, which is even more fucked up, because now their family member is dead and you didn't tell them, and all you could tell them was, oh, we can't bond her out, and you don't give a good legit reason as to why you can't do it. The next part was the mugshot. Now, we saw two different mugshots. We saw one where she was looking straight ahead and you know wearing the orange uniform. Then we saw the other one where her eyes were rolled in the back of her head, and then a lot of people had got outraged about this, including myself. It was like, what is this? And the reason being is because that was the mugshot that we all saw after she was dead. So we all assumed that they took a picture of her in her uniform, in the jail uniform, while she was dead. You know, with her eyes rolled back in the back of her head. And I think they tried to say that picture came out like that because I think she was in the middle of blinking her eyes or something. You know how when some people blink their eyes, you only see the white of their eyes? Or maybe she rolled her eyes. They tried to come up with all kinds of other stuff too, but that right there is still a mystery. But it's still, if the assumption is correct, it's still messed up with that whole mugshot situation. The protesting, the endless amount of protesting that went on for this woman was amazing. It was just amazing. Like I said, it was a worldwide thing. Like, people overseas were talking about it. Like, they could not stop talking about this woman, and for good reason. It's like, it's good that her memory is still being kept alive, because had it been anybody else, they'll try to brush it under the rug. And I'm sure the media probably got tired of talking about it, but I bet you any amount of money, if it was a white woman, they would have kept that shit going. as much as they possibly could. But like I said, the protesting for her was just phenomenal, just out of this world. Let's see. The family got an independent autopsy done, which I think is the best thing to do, because a lot of these departments, they love to have these autopsies done and these independent autopsies done, and a lot of times it's whatever, and we don't know what they do behind closed doors. So the family hired an independent person to do an autopsy for them, and then they came out and basically said that, asked the big question: was this suicide? And the person who did the autopsy said there's no way this could have been suicide, because they did an examination of her neck and everything like that, and they said this person, whoever was responsible for this, is no way she could have did this. And the biggest key to this thing was when they did the DNA testing on the trash bag. They said her fingerprints was nowhere to be found on that bag. And I don't think mainstream media really hyped that up. Of course they didn't. A lot of the stuff that we're learning right now came out in this documentary. So they said there was no DNA from her, as far as fingerprints go, on that trash bag, which means somebody else hoisted her up there, tied that bag, and did this to her, which we all knew from the get-go, but it's the matter of we don't know who did it. So it's like, whatever. And and another thing, when they was doing the when they went back there, when they called the EMS or the emergency people, they went back there with a gurney, like they was about to carry, when they carrying out a body. Well, they went back there for a few minutes, and then they came back out, and the gurney was the same way it was when they went in, which was empty. So it's like, the family's like, hold on, what's going on? Like, I thought you was going to go retrieve the body, but you came back and there's nothing there. So I would like to know what happened at that time period, in that time frame that they went and got, and took that gurney back there. That's what I'm trying to figure out. What was going on at that time, in that time frame? But yeah, that's pretty much what happened with that. Like, it's all one big mystery. Let me see what's else going on here. The media, speaking of the media, they spoke ill, and I do mean, well, mostly the white media spoke ill against her. And it was, I forgot who it was, I think it was on CNN. And ironically, Mark Lamont Hill was on there. But he was actually speaking up for her. And it was this white guy, this old white guy on there, and basically was saying, well, if she wasn't so loud and so belligerent and so arrogant and so shut the fuck up. That's what I want. That's what they should have said to his old crusty ass. Shut the fuck up. And basically saying that she, all types of stuff like that, and saying if she didn't do all of that, she would still be here today. I said it had nothing to do with that, and she had every right to be upset, because she was being pulled over and dealt with over some bullshit and being mishandled and mistreated. See, it's a thing where black people cannot question why we are in the position we are in when it comes to situations like that, because then they'll take it as we are being too uppity. It's almost like we are supposed to just lay down and take it. Like, that's why I always keep saying that they are not far removed from their ancestors, their slave master ancestors. They are not far removed from that. I always say that, and I will continue to say that till I am blue in the goddamn face. They are not far removed from their ancestors. I can't believe I'm still talking about this review. It's almost 30 minutes long, but I'm gonna keep on going until it's done. But yeah, and that guy who said that, he wasn't the only one. I can only imagine what people over at Fox News and Breitbart and Reddit and all them other white-owned racist sites had to say about her. Like, they were saying everything under the sun, calling her everything but a child of God. Now, if you have white people, or a white person, man or woman, well, in this case, let's use a woman, she can say anything she wants and act out however the hell she wants to a cop or anyone in law enforcement, and they will never say that. They'll say it was her First Amendment right. She had every right to get mad. She had every right to be upset. But when it's a black woman, we're using a black woman as an example because Sandra Bland was a black woman. Oh, she was loud. She was belligerent. She was ignorant. She was arrogant. She was this, that, and the third. that shit made it even worse. That shit pissed me off almost more than anything else involved with this case, was hearing them say that stuff about her. And I bet you any amount of money, none of them would have had the balls to say that shit to her face. She would have checked their ass right there on site. Let me see. The last part of this review, which is pretty, well, actually it's like 2 more parts. The last part, Brian and Cynthia was pretty much cleared of all charges. They did the whole grand jury thing. They basically said they couldn't find anything, enough evidence to go forward with a trial. Not surprising. And then they cleared the, oh, that's one thing I'm glad I mentioned. I'm glad I didn't forget this. They cleared Brian and Cynthia of all charges except the charge of perjury. Basically, perjury saying that he was lying about what was in the report. That's all they got him on, was perjury. Not assault, but perjury. And they charged that as a misdemeanor. Now, mind you, earlier in the review, I said that she got charged with a felony, saying that he assaulted her. So she got charged with assault, even though he assaulted her, and he didn't get charged with assault, but just perjury and got hit with a misdemeanor. I said, ain't that some shit? And not only was he cleared of wrongdoing, but the jail that she was inside of was cleared of wrongdoing as well. So basically, nobody was held accountable for her murder, for her death. Not Brian and Cynthia, the person who is the main cause as to why she ended up in that jail, or the jail for, you know, having the death of an inmate in there, and they want to act like they didn't know what happened, and they chalked it up to a suicide. That's how, when they were able to do that, by them being cleared of wrongdoing, that's how they were able to send the nail in the coffin of suicide. Because the minute that they said, that, oh, we're not charging them with anything, they immediately went and said she committed suicide. Even though we know that definitely was not the case. And I know the world, myself, and others was very pissed and upset about that. And excuse me, I'm drinking my protein. But everyone was like really pissed about that and all of that. I know the family was upset. And the only thing that they did with Brian and Cynthia is they fired him. So what? He probably got a job somewhere else and we just don't know where at. And the last part is, you know, they did the whole arbitration thing, you know, the settlement thing. The family didn't want to do a settlement because they knew in those cases when you do a settlement, that pretty much is like the end of the case. And they said that her mother and her other family members went back and forth with that mediator for 8 hours. They were in a room for 8 hours trying to decide whether or not, you know, they was going to take the settlement. And after 8 hours, they finally did. So Sandra Bland's family ended up settling for $1.9 million, which I'm sure came out of taxpayers' pockets. And that was pretty much, you know, the entire documentary. It was some other things in there too, but those were the stuff. That was the stuff I really wanted to talk about. But y'all let me know down in the comments below, what did you think of the review? Did you watch it last night? Would you watch it if you had an opportunity to do so? Just let me know what you think down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. The links will be in the description, and I'll talk to you in the next one.
Do what is necessary to establish your kingdom and queendom, and just be great. Go out there and be the greatest thing that you can, and I guarantee you it will turn your life around. Sandy speaks.